Hey friends, and welcome back to the Alex Makes VR podcast. In today's episode, it's one of those episodes where I just want to check in with you all, really. I've been having some really quite deep conversations with a lot of you on social media, and a lot of you are feeling frustrated. It's that time of the year where things are slowing down and sales aren't going through as quickly, or people aren't responding to your emails. Like, you're just feeling frustrated and a bit aggy and just like you're not making progress. And I feel ya, we all go through it. This is just the natural cycle of working for yourself or running a business. So in this episode, I want to talk about a couple of things that I do when I start to feel that way with business. If you've got a subject or a question, or just want to vent about what's going on in your working world, you can always message me on Instagram or Twitter. It's Alex Makes VR. You can also sign up for my weekly newsletter, where I send out my best tips and tricks to help you guys through this difficult time to feel less alone and to hopefully build a business or a career for yourself that you love. You can sign up for that newsletter at alexmakesvr.com. So, like I said, this episode was spawned from a lot of frustrated messages that I was getting on Instagram in particular. From some of you guys who are going through a bit of a rough time right now. And firstly, I'm so sorry that a lot of you are going through that. And I want you to know that you're not alone. This is absolutely a natural part of working for yourself or running a business, especially in those early stages, especially whilst we're going through a global pandemic, especially as you're trying to kind of like break through and get to those new kind of customers and get that kind of sales process, or just really just get yourself off the ground, really, in terms of working for yourself. So you're not alone. I'm here for you. Let me talk a little bit about what I like to do in these circumstances, because we all go through it. That's important to know. This is just the natural ebb and flow of business. And particularly, it's good to know that every year you will pattern spot that certain times of the year will be naturally quieter. And that could be down to a number of things, whether it be the big sales seasons, in general consumer behavior. For example, running up to Christmas is usually busy for consumers, which means sometimes busy for companies, but companies usually do all their prep running up to Christmas a little bit earlier. So sometimes you can see a bit of a dip from a lot of corporates if they are running up to that busy season. They've got less of a focus on trying new things or working with new suppliers around that time, because it's very hectic, it's very chaotic, everything's going on for them internally. So that's important to know. You'll find that usually the new year can also be a little bit quiet, but around March, kind of April time, is where stuff really kind of like kicks off. Like, that's usually my busiest time of year, is kind of February to April, which I think for a lot of us who have been working for ourselves for a while, that's why probably this pandemic kind of hit even harder psychologically, because just around the time that we would usually be kind of rearing up to our busiest time of year, that's when kind of all the work died off and the world stood still. So yeah, I mean, that's just anecdotal, though. That could be different for everyone. And it also depends on what industry you're working with specifically. So if you're working with a particular niche that happens to have opposite sales cycles, so maybe their busy period is during the summer, so you're busy during the summer, but then really quiet around March, April. It's really varied depending on who you're working with. So number one could be a way to deal with your frustration is maybe like have a look at some of those trends, maybe do a bit of research online to find out where those sales cycles lie. It's also important in England, in the UK specifically, it's also important to know when the tax year falls, because that also has quite a big impact, usually anyway, on things like marketing budgets. So that's not something that you can necessarily find out readily, but I mean, in England, I think it's the same in the other UK countries, but specifically in England, that's where my kind of like company is based. A lot of companies' year ends will be around the kind of March, April time. So again, that's why it tends to get busy. New budgets are coming in. Everyone's kind of, looking to allocate more. Sometimes you can benefit from people having a little bit left over in their marketing budget and they need to spend it before the new tax year. So, all of those things are coming into play in the background, which I guess leads me on to point number 2, which is that when I'm feeling frustrated or I'm not kind of getting as many sales or I'm not kind of pushing or progressing as much as I wish that I was, I like to sometimes kind of bring it back to the core basics of business, which is, am I thinking about them? Let me take myself out of my own head, my own bias, my own wants and needs, and let me put myself in their shoes, in my customer's shoes, in my client's shoes, in my potential customer and client's shoes. Let me think about this from their point of view. And sometimes it's as simple as that can really kind of give me a good enough big picture perspective to not feel frustrated anymore. So for example, if I'm like waiting on a project to be signed off, we're on the final stretch. They've committed to the project. We know what we need to do. We've committed to the kind of project it's going to be. We've even got high level kind of storyboard in place. I'm just waiting for them to sign off the script, or I'm just waiting for them to sign off the budget. And then we can go, and then that will be important for me because I can invoice my deposit invoice, and then that will mean cash flow into the company account and all that stuff like it's going on in my head. But actually, let me take myself out of that and let me think about it from their point of view. This project is about to launch, and we've done all the prep work. So why might they have delayed it their end? Well, maybe this was part of a larger marketing or event strategy that now has been pushed back or is suffering or is having to be redesigned because of COVID. So potentially that's why it's been delayed. Potentially my project manager, that is my direct line of contact with the client, maybe they've got some personal stuff going on at home. Like maybe they've got loads going on, and actually they've just not had a chance to chase it up on our behalf because actually they don't want that project to start just yet because they're really busy. Maybe, do you see what I'm kind of getting at? There could be all these different reasons going on their side. Really human reasons as well, like not just, the company accounts don't align and so therefore, it's not necessarily even about those more bureaucratic reasons. It could be more personal reasons. It could be that, like I say, because all business is humans, right? So it could be that the humans on their side are going through some stuff. Like I once had a project that was signed off, deposit invoice was paid, we were ready to go, shoot date was scheduled, and then literally I just never heard from them. And I chased and I rang them, and it was like the day of the shoot and I was in London because I thought, well, I'm going to be here just in case, but I've not heard anything. So this is really weird. It was one of those situations where luckily it was just me, and it's not like I'd pulled in a load of other crew for it. So, and I was like really kind of, it was bizarre. And I was so like annoyed because I felt like this is ridiculous. What a waste of like time. And I just couldn't get a response from anyone. And lo and behold, I think it was probably a good few weeks had passed. And it turned out that the person who was heading up that project had died really suddenly, like heart attack. And so on their side, on the company side, not only were they dealing with this grief, not only were they dealing with this huge loss at a fairly kind of, they were a big company, but this person in particular was like at the heart of that company, had been there since it started, really quite important figure. So everyone was grieving, but also now they were dealing with like the ramifications of that person's death and having to like put things in place behind the scenes and take over their duties and, you know, get around to all of the tens of hundreds of projects that person was responsible for. And obviously my like little tiny part was this tiny bit of the puzzle for them. And when you kind of realize something like that, you go, wow, like that's heavy, you know? And sometimes it takes like putting yourself in those mindsets. Sometimes it takes kind of zooming out and looking at the big picture. And even if you don't know what's going on your clients or your potential clients' end, even just kind of thinking about what could possibly be going on kind of alleviates frustration, because you just think, you know what, like everyone's going through a tough time right now. So maybe they're going through a really tough time and I'm not going to get angry and I'm not going to get frustrated. And although, of course, there are ramifications for you, whether that be, you know, you need to pay your rent, you need to put a roof over your head, you need to put food on your table. Of course, those things are important, but also there's a human on the other side of that. So that just helps me. I think learning that early on and having that experience with that particular client really helped, I think, as horrible as that is to say, helped shape my perspective on things like this. So that's a really good solution. The other thing, which is a bit less perspective and mindset and a little bit more like cold, hard, practical advice, would be to go have a look through all of your correspondence that you've been sending out to potential clients. Go have a look through all of or have a think through like the phone calls that you've had, have a think through the marketing you've put out. What have you written in your captions on social media? Like, just analyze all the stuff you've been putting out and analyze how much of it is from the perspective of helping yourself versus helping that other person. In your emails, are you talking me? Are you saying, I'm a virtual tour photographer, I'm a 360 producer, I do this. Do you need work from me? I'm an expert. I can help you with this. You know, me. Or, which is what it should be, is your marketing, is your sales outreach emails, or is all your correspondence from the perspective of them? How can I help you? What problem do you have in your business? How can I help solve your problems? Where are you at with your marketing? You know, does this fit into that? Can this help you with your sales? Can I help you solve your problems? You helping them. Because that, and I know that I always bring it back to this, but that is what is at the heart of business. That, for me personally, that's what I think. I think a good business, a good service, a good product, at the heart of that is helping solve someone's problem. So, of course, you're not going to get as far with your sales and as far with your marketing if you are coming from a selfish point of view. And don't get me wrong, we can absolutely all get into that headspace. I can be very guilty of that. Sometimes, you know, I just get in my own head and I get frustrated and I can go into that place. And it's funny because I can spot it immediately, because I will like look through the stuff that I'm putting out and be like, oh yeah, I can really tell that I was in like a me mode then. And I wasn't thinking about the other person. I wasn't thinking about solving someone else's problem. I wasn't thinking about how I can offer value. And ultimately, in order to run a good business, in order to deliver good services to your clients, to the people in your life in general, you have to put them first. You have to think from their perspective. So, cold, hard, practical advice, go through your correspondence, your emails, and see if you've been a little bit too me. And then, the next load of emails you send, make sure that you make it about them. Make sure that you're offering to solve their problems. Ask them about their business. How are they doing during this time? Rather than coming from a selfish point of view. So I hope that helps. I hope those few little tips can get you through this difficult time. It's small changes, but I promise you it can make a massive difference. It's like the little ripple in the river, right? It's you throw the pebble and the ripples get bigger and bigger just from that one little throw. Just change that slight thing in your mindset, in the way you're approaching people, and that will have massive repercussions down the line, I promise you. But also know that it is okay. It's okay. Like this is part of being in business for yourself, is that you will go through cycles like this, but it's important that you do reach out. So I'm here. You can always reach out to me. You can reach out on Instagram or Twitter. My handle is AlexMakesVR. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that you are doing wonderful wherever you are in the world and you are hanging in there, because I believe in you and I hope you believe in yourself too. If you like this episode, it would mean the world to me if you screenshotted it and posted it on your social media, tagging me. I saw a few of you do that last week and it absolutely made my heart throb with joy. That was a bit dramatic, wasn't it? Shakespeare over here. So genuinely, it means the world and it helps get the word out about the podcast. So that would really, really mean the world to me if you would do that. If you're listening on Apple, it would mean the absolute world to me again if you could leave a 5-star rating. But I don't want to ask too much of you, because I've just done a whole episode about how you don't think from my perspective, think from their perspective. So absolutely no worries if you don't have time. Just keep your head up, keep grinding, and I will speak to you in the next episode.